and Dr. Octopus. But before I do, I want you to know that I'm not trying to be a spokesperson for any generation, and I'm not a career expert either. I'm 21 years old. But for the past 8 months, I've been managing and organizing an online community of business professionals and young careerists. And in the process, I've learned a thing or two about the future of careers, and what that means for our culture, our lives, and our world. In the 1950s, the United States was the manufacturing capital of the world, which meant that many Americans were factory workers. And then came this man, Peter Drucker, and he said that eventually we would advance to a place where we would be doing more work with our minds than we were with our hands. And he coined this term the knowledge worker. And at the time, everybody thought he was crazy. But then the United States started outsourcing all of those factory jobs, and we became a nation of knowledge workers. Now, technology is advancing us to a place where the majority of work is done not by our minds, not by our hands, but by computers. I mean, think about all of the formulas and all of the math that Excel does automatically. Secretaries used to take notes and messages, and now we just have programs like Google Voice. Believe it or not, we actually had to, at one point in time, harvest crops by hand. I learned a couple months in that Farmville isn't real, but I think it's an interesting symbol for what I'm talking about. I'd like to introduce this term, or highlight this term, the digital worker. You see, our generation will work largely through technology-based extensions that will act as sort of extra arms and legs, and we'll just oversee what they do. In his book, The Age of Unreason, Charles Handy says that in the future, half as many people will be employed. On average, they'll be making twice as much money, and they'll be producing 3 times as much. Let me say that again. Half as many people employed, making twice as much money, and producing 3 times as much. Let me explain. If half as many people are employed, it doesn't mean that they don't have a job or don't have an income. It just means that twice as many people are working for themselves. And that means that there will be shrinking overhead costs for small businesses and solo practices, which will sort of redistribute the income and have the average person making twice as much money. In the process of having these technology-based extensions doing most of the work, we'll be able to produce 3 times as much. Now, this is kind of a scary picture that I just painted, but I think it allows for some pretty awesome opportunities. Now, we are on our way to a place where almost any work will be able to be done from anywhere in the world at any time. And I think that's a good thing, because when polled, 72% of people said that they like the option of working from home. Look at this picture. I love this picture. This is the Prime Minister of Norway. He's stranded in a New York City airport last week because of the volcano that erupted over Iceland. I'm not going to try to pronounce the name of that volcano. He's working remotely on his iPad, running a country across the Until today's opportunities, many stay-at-home parents were stuck in that sort of 1960s Betty Draper world where they were longing for an impossible career. But today, those careers are possible. And for Betty, who's one of the principal characters in AMC's Mad Men, she wanted to be a model. Now, I've been told that not all stay-at-home moms or stay-at-home dads look like Betty Draper. But I'm also aware that today, Photoshop only costs about $70. And if you're a stay-at-home mom or stay-at-home dad and you want to be a model, I say, go for it. Why not? We are a generation that cares about causes, like the Green Movement and human rights campaigns. And if we're producing 3 times as much, imagine how much of that we can direct towards a better world. I'm hopeful for that. Now, I'm seeing that employers are starting to notice some of these changes, because today they're more and more likely to fit a job around a talented person, rather than try to squeeze that person into some predefined role. Yes, the future of careers will be different. But how do we make that transition into that future? Well, I've come up with sort of 3 recommendations for our generation and how we can go into the workplace and make that transition happen. And the first is that we need to learn from Generation X. When Generation X, which is anyone born between 1960 and 1980, came into the workforce, it was highly structured, and they worked hard, and they earned the respect, and they opened eyes to the ideas of work-life balance, of distanced employment relationships, and solo practices. as Generation Y, we will have to earn our stripes too. We'll have to be accountable for that flexibility that we need. If you want to leave work in the middle of the day for a Red Sox game, you better damn well make sure your work is done on time and it's done well, even if it means finishing up after midnight the night before. Finally, we will have to patiently teach our superiors about technology. In my experience, I've actually found that people are more open to that sort of reverse mentoring than you might think. So thank you so much for your time. That is the future of careers as I see it.